I was a singer. All my life I wanted to be a singer since I was 2 years old. And I was doing a doctorate in voice and was having some difficulty managing some stage fright, 20 years of stage fright. And long story short, decided I had a professor at the University of Michigan, the dean, who was also a voice professor, said that you should take Judith Becker's Intro to Ethnomusicology. And he said, I think you would like it. I think it would be something that would interest you. And so I didn't think much about it. I didn't even think about why he was asking me. But when I took the course with Judith Becker, I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. I had been noticing things in my doctoral program in voice. I was a doctoral student in voice at Michigan. That they would teach black music without movement or without dance. And for me, that didn't make any sense. And then I noticed that most of the people who taught those courses were not people of African descent, and that didn't make any sense to me. And I had said kind of in my inside voice that I would like to see black music taught differently, so that people, I even thought Johann Strauss would be better if college students learned how to waltz, and that maybe that would deter some of the sexual assault things that were going on college campuses even 20 plus years ago. I just thought there's no enculturation, no training in civility with the opposite sex. And so once I took that course and once I began to learn about transcription and analysis, and I liked the people and I liked studying people as opposed to studying notes on a page. And so that's what attracted me to ethnomusicology. I ended up at University of Michigan, and I just recently learned this from another graduate of the School of Music, Professor Edith Boroff, who taught at SUNY Binghamton. She was a professor of mine in music history during my master's program. And she recommended that I pay attention to the University of Michigan. She had a really interesting approach to teaching music history, the semester I took it. She played 19th century composers on a listening exam at the beginning of every class, and then later revealed at the end of the semester when she would always warn us, don't guess who the composer is. If you guess who the composer is, you'll lose like 25 to 50 points on each. So it was prohibitive. You would not try to guess. And at the end of the semester, she shared that all of the composers, this was a white woman, okay, let me be clear, all of the composers were African Americans from the 19th century, and I hadn't known any black composers from the 20th century at the time. And that was really a great pedagogical lever, like it opened something up for me. And then so when she recommended that I look at Michigan, she also mentioned that they had a black music symposium in 1985, and that a lot of black composers were there and professors, and that she and some people may know Richard Crawford, a scholar who's an expert in Duke Ellington and Porgy and Bess, were the only two white people there, and that intrigued me as well. And so I ended up auditioning, going there for a doctorate in voice. Michigan had 7 African American faculty in music, theater, and dance, and about 30 African American and not many African students then, but all African American students. And we had all come from feeder programs around the country, some HBCUs, historically black colleges, and some predominantly white colleges and universities, that we were usually the only black student in our class or in the school. And so now there's 30 of us on the undergrad and grad level. It was a really life-changing experience for me in music to be classically trained black musicians at one of the premier institutions for schools of music in the country. It was, all of the people, we just had a kind of a reunion of that 1985 Black Music Symposium called Reflecting the Past, Looking Toward the Future. And there's so many black classical musicians and composers that come out of the University of Michigan. So I'm a proud Go Blue Michigan alum. And the program there, the ethnomusicology program there has produced some of the most visionary ethnomusicologists, in my opinion. I think we're all great at what we do, but I think Deborah Wong, Ronald Rodano, I could list on both hands the number of people who've come out of the ethnomusicology program at Michigan, and they all do very innovative work. Timothy Taylor even though he was historical, he studied a lot of ethnomusicology there. It was a great experience, coming of age for me there as an adult and as an emerging scholar. I initially wanted to study some topic in Black American music or African American music, and I initially wanted to do hip hop. Susan McClary's now husband, Rob Walzer, was a doctoral student who was filling in for Richard Crawford, and he taught this American music course which ended with Public Enemy, Fight the Power. And I did a transcription of that for an ethno course at the time and also used it in that class. And I began to think about, well, what is it that musical blackness, how do you learn musical blackness? If ethnomusicology is about understanding how people make meaning of their lives through music, and there's this big discourse both within Black culture and outside of Black culture that, this thing is in your blood. And since we know that it's not a DNA specific thing, some kind of music talent, since we're all the same human race and there's not a separation between white and Black people, how do you learn to be musically Black? And I thought I was going to do that through a project on hip-hop culture explicitly, but I wanted to study gender and women in hip-hop. And I ended up lucking upon two 7 or 8 year old Black girls playing a hand-clapping game song called Slide. Slide, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And I thought, oh my God, there's something like the beats and rhymes of hip hop are in that. And it's helping people learn the ideals of Black music. So you're learning about syncopation by holding a steady pulse through the expanding algorithm of that hand clapping game song. And then I began to look at other game songs. So my dissertation came to be from that experience. The title of it was The Games Black Girls Play, Music, Body, and Soul, which eventually led to my book, which won the Alan Merriam Book Prize for the most outstanding English monograph from the Society for Ethnomusicology, which was totally a wish, but something I never thought would come true. That was a highlight. So my work has always been about sexism. I would say it's like sexism in the music between the sexes, and how girls' musical play in the public domain is often incorporated or excorporated, like taken away from girls' play and culture and exploited for profit in various ways, exploited for helping artists who can't afford clearing sample clearances, who can borrow from the pot of vernacular music, particularly girls' play, and have it be valued without the stigma of it being feminized. Now I've moved from vernacular play and popular song to studying gender stratification and gender norms and sexism in YouTube, looking at Black girls twerking videos and looking at the ways in which audiences socially reproduce sexism, misogynoir like anti-Black sexism, and adultification of girls, and the kind of the pornification of content that really is play but is perceived as pornographic. And so I've been lucky to be in ethnomusicology because I haven't had a lot of constraints. I could be very artistic because I'm a performer at heart, a musician and an artist at heart. So I can be very creative with how I tell the stories of people who make music. I think it's why I still think it's an underrepresented field in people's thoughts about going to grad school. It's not the first thing that comes to mind. In fact, most people don't know what ethnomusicology means. So I often say I teach the anthropology of music because people accept anthropology even though they don't know what it is. And so I think that it's been a very, very good field. It's a great field to teach from for me, especially to teach members of marginalized groups. Some people call it like decolonizing higher ed. I don't think of that, but I know that's what I do. The highlight is, there's three. I went to the University of Michigan. I'm a very, very proud graduate, not just because of the program in ethnomusicology and the School of Music there, which is really a wonderful, wonderful institution, but the larger graduate level, there were 600 currently enrolled, over 600 currently enrolled Black, Brown, Latina, Latinx, and Native American PhD students all over the campus. And it was refreshing to have that at a predominantly white institution where you knew that was also a very important space for producing PhDs in every school, business law. I mean, friends that I have that I still connect with who are professors all around the world, both Black and non-Black. The second was winning the Merriam Prize. One of my other highlights was that I became a TED Fellow in 2009. And because of, I still perform. I'm still a singer, and I still actively perform and occasionally record. And so to be a singer, to be a published author and an award-winning author, and I've done a lot of social justice projects as well. The most recent being a project called Brick by Brick that I collaborate with other TED Fellows. It's an anti-misogyny wall of women against 45. And these walls of women wear outfits that look like brick walls, and they have sayings from Donald Trump from before the election on them, and we stand in silence and solidarity against misogyny. And I even see that as a kind of a musical performance project. And so the highlight has been that I was able to join the TED community. I'm a Ford Fellow as well, and to be among people who are really out to change the inequality and the inequities that we have in society. My particular orientation is towards gender and racialized gender, from YouTube to Wikipedia right now. I think that it's more critical than it's ever been for people to think about the role of the arts and the role of music in healing the kind of rifts that we have in society and in the world, and that you can't argue a love song away. You can't. It's a different part of your brain, and it's a different part of intellect when you write about how music affects people's lives and how people use the most heinous, hurtful, harmful things and turn them into extraordinary pieces of human, communication, which we call music, art, dance, movement. And that I think in this age of moving towards math and science all the time, that we forget how important it is to humanize our souls with art and music and dance and poetry and song and tune speech and and play and play and play. That's like the big thing and play. So it's important that there are alternative curricula in academia, and in a world where people are increasingly anxious about what they need to do with their degrees, that there's a space where people can slow down and think about what it means to be human, not just part of the humanities, but to enact ethnomusicology for many of us as part being a performer and part being like a creative nonfiction writer. And all of us, from the poorest of the poor to the wealthiest of the wealthy, think about things but to craft narratives where people see themselves in those narratives, whether it's through ethnographic performative pieces or writing. I think it's something that English can't provide as easily as someone who studies ethnography and turns experience into some kind of translated text. So there's this thing about getting a degree of higher education and learning to meet other people, learning to translate their experiences. I think that's incredible. You can find it in a lot of the social sciences, but ethnomusicology provides a very unique orientation to that. And I think the other is that there's, for me, being African American and trying to sell this all the time as well, but I realized if I love music, I get to do something I love and have it valued in a way that becoming just a musical artist isn't. The work that I produce has an impact on my community, not just ivory tower, I go somewhere and I leave my community, and all that I write about has nothing to do with the people that I came from. I am a native ethnographer. I write for other African Americans. I write so that people around the world can appreciate what African American experience and culture is. And probably even the latter part of this is like I happen to teach at a school that has a lot of students of African descent. My classes are full of students of African descent, and we don't have enough spaces in predominantly white institutions that are predominantly non-white, so that white students can also learn what it's like to decenter the things that we've inherited that are predominantly Western oriented. Even pop music can be Western oriented in the way that people think about things, where the bottom line is more important than whose memory music came from. And so there's I increasingly learned how important and political it is to do this kind of work, but to still keep the fun and the play and the joy and the flourishing essence that comes from being in music and in performance, and then all of the things that performance alludes to about what's political in life. We all perform identities, all of us. Doesn't matter who you are. And when you think about it through the lens of music making, it can kind of help you understand why, I don't know, whiteness looks different than Asianness, or South Asianness looks different than East Asianness, but that they're all things that I think all of us, we don't just learn them, they're the spaces we occupy, the region, the dirt, the soil, they keep in place certain identities, and these social science disciplines help us see the humanizing factors in that.